There was once a woman who was the best reporter of her day, sat on the scoop of the century. She made one fatal flaw. We'll expose that over a couple of segments, but she angered the wrong group. And if they're willing to take out a president, allegedly, I don't know what possessed her to think that a reporter, a journalist, would be immune from retribution. This is the story, in part, of the woman who knew too much. But first, we've got to build her reputation. How big was she? And we're going to get into this right here on the Common Sense Show. My name is Dave Hodges. I'm the host. We're the show, Freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are brought to you by, well, something you really need to pay attention to in these troubling times, My Digital Money. You're going to need safe havens and you're going to need to generate income. And I'm telling you right now, crypto is positioned and has begun the slow climb, but it's going to explode. Why? Because if this war goes on much longer, the banks have very little recourse. The dollar is already on life support. It's going to be worse. And we're going to go digital. Why do you think Trump has surrounded himself with the Silicon Valley crowd? Exactly. So this is a story into itself. So I'll keep it short here. Uh, in part, my portfolios, including My Digital Money, because I know this thing's going to go to the moon, and then you can sell back, reinvest in something more long term. This is awesome. Or you can invest more because digital ain't going nowhere as long as Peter Thiel's people are on the Science and Technology Commission. So we're glad to be with you. You know who I am, Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show, Freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time. And if you want to take advantage of this great offer, great people from My Digital Money, simply go to mydigitalmoney.com or call 833-MDM 2008. That's MDM 2008, 833, toll-free number. Dorothy Kilgallen. I've reported on her before, and I alluded to this in the introductory piece today. This was a woman who was incredible. Now, I'm going to give you a teaser for what's coming because I'm going to come back to this in a later segment. On the last day of her life, she woke up in the wrong bedroom, reading the wrong book, with the wrong facial covering, and no reading glasses. Dorothy Kilgallen. This is a cover up befitting the 30-06. It's that bad. But in 1965, people were a little more accepting. Now you're saying, well, Dave, where are you going with this? Dorothy Kilgallen began to expose things about the CIA that they're covering up today, is witnessed by the raid on their boss, Tulsi Gabbard, done illegally on American soil, which the CIA is not allowed to do. And we're going to get into what Dorothy found out about the CIA in a couple of segments. It's great history, it's interesting, and it's very telling on why I said that Joe Kent, Tulsi Gabbard, and Tucker Carlson are in danger. And so is anybody else who crosses the path into pure revelation. Because the CIA has made it clear they're going to keep information from the public come hell or high water. They don't care about the chain of command. They don't care about treason allegations. They don't care about violating their charter with domestic operations. They just don't care. So let's take a look at what Dorothy was looking into. She was looking into the JFK files. And she made the mistake of talking to people. And she told people, hey, I'm going to blow this case wide open. She actually interviewed Jack Ruby, more on that in a later segment. And she said, I've got the greatest scoop in the century, but she didn't reveal much. but she did write a chapter in what they called the JFK files that she carried with her 24/7. Now, this is how big she was. She quit college after 2 semesters and went to a major paper and said, "Hire me." And they did. And she quickly became a star. And she did investigative journalism that made the show The Fugitive what it was. Remember the movie The Fugitive, 90s? The TV show with David Janssen before that. And he was playing the role of Sam Shepard, who supposedly and allegedly brutalized his wife, brutally murdered her. And a corrupt judge was exposed. Um, and she gave information that she found to Shepard's attorney, F. Lee Bailey. It was the basis for a trial that was heard at the Supreme Court. So this appeal was successful based on Dorothy's information, and Sam Shepard was acquitted. And it wouldn't have happened without Dorothy Kilgallen. That's how big she was. She was absolutely huge. In 1959, she also exposed the CIA working with the mafia to assassinate Fidel Castro. No secret, folks. Operation Mongoose. If you've been around the Kennedy assassination at all, I'm sure you've heard of that. But she exposed it. I mean, this was a person who was amazing. Well, after she made that expose with Operation Mongoose, J. Edgar Hoover, now remember the CIA legally couldn't do this, although it doesn't seem to bother him now, but J. Edgar Hoover put her under surveillance. We know this from FBI files that have been released. They surveilled every phone call, every movement. They watched her 24/7, as we came to find out. Now, this was a person who had 20 million daily readers to her column. And on top of that, she was on TV. On top of that, she was on the radio lucratively. And she was on the most famous game show in America, Sunday night version of What's My Line, where a customer would come out and they would they'd be asked questions, up to 20 questions about what's your occupation, but they couldn't ask that directly. They had to guess what it was. Does it have anything to do with people? Is it bigger than a bread box? And she was really, really good on this show. And she was, I would say, the star of the show. She was pretty, she was accomplished, she was intelligent, and she knew how to get people to talk. Now, when JFK was assassinated, 2 days later, Jack Ruby assassinated Lee Oswald. Just ask yourself a question. How does Ruby get in the basement when they're transferring Oswald from one jail to the other? The alleged assassin of the President of the United States, and he's not guarded. And Ruby's able to get up at point blank range. And I saw this live on TV when I was a little kid. And I looked at my dad, what happened? He goes, they just murdered him. And then my dad turned to my mom and said, this is a major cover up. They just killed the assassin so he couldn't talk. I heard that right there. That stuck in my mind for the rest of my life. She went and talked to Jack Ruby for 30 minutes with no witnesses on a break from the trial that accused him of the murder. By the way, Jack Ruby was involved in Bay of Pigs, the invasion to overthrow Fidel Castro using Cuban refugees, and he was involved in the gun running part of it, raising money through illicit activities in his nightclub called the Carousel Club. And he actually was a member of the Chicago Mafia, which passed from Al Capone to Sam Giancana, who will factor into this. So this is a well-connected mobster, well known to the Dallas police. He used to entertain them. Dallas police force was about as corrupt as they came during that time, and he entertained them. This is how he got in to the police garage and killed Oswald. This is absolutely no question. This is how he did. They know who he was. Now, she also, when the Warren Commission was going on, the investigation to look into the death of President Kennedy, and what it was the cover up of J. Edgar Hoover, Chief Justice Warren, and Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who pretty clearly had foreknowledge of what was coming. He had his car put all the way back in the motorcade where Kennedy was the lead car, illegal under Secret Service procedures. But anyway, the Warren Commission had a leak, and the leak went to Dorothy Kilgallen, and she knew there was a massive cover-up of evidence, massive, and she was given over 100 pages of testimony, and a lot of it linked right into Ruby. Now, Jack Ruby was scared. He knew he was going to be killed. He told the judge in the trial and also asked Chief Justice Earl Warren, please bring me to Washington and I'll tell your commission everything you want to know. What? He says, I can't talk here, but I'll talk there. Well, he's under guard and he's got chains on and handcuffs. Who's he going to hurt? Warren said no. They didn't want to know the truth. They didn't want him to reveal anything. He died a mysterious death, by the way, too. He came down with pneumonia and died of a quick-acting cancer. During that time, Dorothy Kilgallen was telling people the lone gunman story is a joke, and I've got the Warren Commission suppressed data that proves it. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. Who was her Warren Commission leak? And this is something that Jim Marrs and I talked about quite a bit. And we think we know who it was, although it was never formally revealed. But I think it was discovered upon her death because all the JFK files from her possession were gone. There was a man on the Warren Commission, Congressman Hale Boggs from Louisiana, and Congressman Nick Begich Sr. from Alaska. That would be Nick Begich Jr. You know, you've heard him interviewed on my show years ago, and he's now a congressman. He said his father was murdered to cover this up. I mean, he's been very blunt about that. I've said that in previous years. Hale Boggs was flying with Nick Begich Sr. to Nick's home in Alaska, and their plane mysteriously crashed and no proper search was ever done. No rescue attempt, I should say, was ever done. Hale Boggs was refusing to sign on to the Warren Commission. He wanted to put a notation in there that says, I totally disagree with the findings here and another investigation needs to take place. Nick Begich was supporting him. This was two high-profile congressmen dying. And yet the media, barely a whisper on this. That's who I believed Dorothy Kilgallen got the information leaked to her from these two, or at least I think it was Hale Boggs for sure. And this ultimately, I think, led to their demise. We're going to actually close that loop in another segment. I'm looking at my notes here, people, and I got to say, Dorothy Kilgallen was obviously the best journalist in America. I don't think just in her time, but in any time. Ruby, before he died, he was encouraged by Dorothy Kilgallen to go public. And he gave a brief passing interview on his way into trial. Are there powerful people behind the killing of JFK? Yes, very powerful people. That's about as close to a public admission that we're going to get. And he obviously was placed in a position where he had to act. Well, Dorothy interviewed him for 30 minutes, and we don't have any details, but I guarantee you, the night she was murdered and all the files were taken, and we'll talk about that in a future segment, that loop was closed. That discovery was made who it was. In fact, there'll be another suspicious ending of life with someone very close to Dorothy. And when we tell you about this, you're going to go, oh my gosh, how many coincidences does it take to make a conspiracy? You'd literally have to be a coincidence theorist to believe that all these deaths are unrelated. In fact, actually, the MIT did a study. I'll never forget this because I heard this, I think I was in high school, and it was a retrospective. How many people with some kind of direct or ancillary ties to the JFK assassination or related figures How many of them end up dying unnatural, suspicious deaths within a 3-year period? The MIT did the study on this. The number was over 300. I think it was 360 if memory serves me correctly, but it was well over 300. And we're going to cover a couple of those very, very suspicious deaths. We've already hit Jack Ruby. We've given you hints to Dorothy Kilgallen's ending, but we haven't given you the entire story. That's something that we're going to hit in a future segment. This is shocking beyond belief. But these are the files that the CIA will not let go public at any cost. Do you realize they're violating a presidential order, executive order, right, that Trump made to release the JFK files? That Tulsi Gabbard, the head of national intelligence, head of the CIA by default. And I think you can see the problem here. Trump's out of the country with the CIA director Ratcliffe, who Trump trusts, and this goes off while they're out of the country. What conclusion would you draw? I look forward to your comments. We're not done. We're just getting started.